Hey, it's International Women's Day. I'll be playing some of those artists for you, all the female artists, all day here on Afternoons Live. You got somebody you want to hear? 35270. Let's see, I consult some North Dakota Text Club. We'll play them. You got to send them in. Joe Jett went to her while she was over at the Lights in West Fargo. Was that last year? I think it was last year. Great performance. Had a fun time. Still rocks at what, I think 60... she's in her early 60s is what I'm going to guess. I don't have the definitive answer, but still put on a hell of a show. Good time. The place was full. I know that the Lights over there getting some big names over. In fact, we've been hearing some of those announced right here on KFGO during It Takes Two. But yeah, Joan Jett, still fun, still rocking. Enjoyed it. If you were out there, I hope you had a great time as well. We'll play those throughout the afternoon here. In a little bit, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And, you know, there's been some developments since then. We were expecting to have Congressman Kelly Armstrong right now, but the schedule, obviously, with everything in fluctuation out in Washington, when it comes to these last-minute votes, also they're honoring others out in Congress. We're going to try to get that conversation rolling tomorrow. But what's happened since you and I spoke yesterday? Well, that whole Russian oil ban on importing and allowing that to come on these shores, President Biden did it today. Well, now with all the warnings at what that might do to you at the gas pump, which is something that we discussed yesterday, and I had asked, is that a trade-off you're willing to do, pay more at the pump if you're going to ban this? And I didn't have anybody say no. But with that, we're talking about how expensive it is to fill up the rig. And it's probably only going to get worse. I know that if you missed our conversation with Gene LaDucer, AAA, yesterday, I'd asked if this were to happen, now that it is happening, what it could do. Gas prices. And one of the things that sounded a little bit reassuring in his response was a lot of that speculation has already been baked into the international markets when it comes to pricing of gas. Not saying that's not going to have an impact, that it's not going to continue to tick up. I think the place where I filled up today had jumped up to 10 cents from yesterday. So it is... it's happening, but it sounds like even if it gets to $200 a barrel now in oil because of this ban, that it's not going to all of a sudden jump up to $5 overnight. But one of the things that some people, and not everyone's there, you've heard this from people in high profile. Pete Buttigieg, for example. Now, it's a great time to buy electric. Get an electric vehicle, and then you don't have to worry about what you're paying at the pump. Some people called in yesterday. Some people texted about that same sentiment. And it asked, or it had us raising questions about just in this upper Midwest climate, the reliability of it. People are asking, well, can an average Joe or Jane afford these electric vehicles? During the Super Bowl, that was the biggest push. I remember the whole commercials, not everybody was all gleeful about what they were because they weren't spectacular Super Bowl commercials this year, but there was a couple of themes. One was cryptocurrency. The other was electronic vehicles and pushing those. All brands, all makes, saying, you know what, we've got your next electric vehicle right here. Well, that's been the case in some of the area up here. And in fact, Ward Gator down in Vision 4 is going to be joining us to answer hopefully some of the questions that you had about the affordability of what he's got on the lot, about that reliability when we're talking about the winters up here and how cold it's gotten. I know we had some people that were texting and saying, look, I've got one of the Tesla 3s up here that I've been driving for some time. Here's my experience with it. Here's what I would recommend for other people. Here's what I would not do if I were others looking to get in this market. So that conversation will be coming up in just a little bit. You can send in, if you've got a question about electric vehicles in general, you can send those in right now as well, the 35270, and we'll ask one of the dealers that has been discussing those. And has been selling those to your neighbors across the upper Midwest here. So that's coming up in a little bit. Also, if you've been watching, we'll get into this probably a little bit later on in the show when it comes to 4 more years when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. Everybody thought, okay, he's gone. Okay, stand right now. It's 2:14 on a Tuesday. It's been 4 minutes since I really turned the microphone on. I stand corrected because I said into this microphone repeatedly that Aaron Rodgers will be back in uniform, but it will not be a Green Bay Packer uniform. He was going to be elsewhere. Say in Denver, playing for the Broncos. Not the case. He's back. And he's now, I think, the top paid quarterback in the entire league, beating up Pat Mahomes. But who went to Denver? Russell Wilson. Seattle trading over to Denver. I mean, it's a whole package, but the whole AFC West. You think about Russell Wilson now going to be the Broncos quarterback. You got Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City, Derek Carr with the Las Vegas Raiders, and Justin Herbert when it comes to the LA Chargers. That is a stacked quarterback conference out in the AFC. That's going to be a very fun time to be watching that all next year. But Green Bay fans, how you feeling today? Mike, I'm talking to you. That text in all the time. You said, get the diva out of here. He's back. Are you smiling or are you kicking pebbles? How about you Vikings fans? What's this going to do when it comes to the market for Kirk Cousins? We'll talk about all that and more coming up after this. I'm getting messages about electric vehicles. We'll come back to all that and so much more right after this. I'm Tyler Axis, just getting started here on Afternoons Live. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that?
From It Takes Two.
Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voice of Sports.
Too tall.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah
Seven.
Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working.
I mean, if we're going to be playing all-female musicians for a bump, I mean, it's without question that Dolly Parton has to be a part of the mix. I'm a little surprised at the song selection of Dolly Parton that you went with, though.
It's got such a great intro. Hits you right in the face right away.
Was last night the Country Music Awards, or what was it?
Sure. I think there's like 5 of them.
I don't know either.
There's the CMAs, there's the AMCs,
No, that's the American Movie Channel, I think.
Isn't there the Academy of ACM, Academy of Country Music?
I do not know. Yeah. This is where I need that average Joe to sit and watch these things and then explain it to me why we should get excited for these. But why I asked after you playing Dolly Parton was because it was all over my social media last night. I mean, like all over Instagram, all over Twitter about Dolly Parton. I don't know, she must have been hosting.
Oh, yeah. I am completely in the dark, so I can't help you out with this one.
I would have assumed that had anybody maybe planted the seed.
Hours that you've spent making fun of me for being emo, you think that I would be caught up on modern country award season?
Maybe the significant other would have been put.
She's a rave kid. You know that.
That's true. I don't really. We didn't. I ended up watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine for a couple episodes. She had to work. So I got the remote, and you know me, it's mindless television 90% of the time. I don't want to think. At the end of the day, supper's done. Kick the feet up. It's just something that is so idiotic that fits with my sense of humor. That's typically what I go to. And somebody got me hooked on this whole Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I just started watching it like 2 weeks ago. It ain't bad. I know there's the Andy, Samberg. There's people that either really like, either really don't. I have enjoyed dang near everything he's been in.
Yeah, a super underrated movie, Hot Rod.
Hot Rod is hilarious.
Yeah, and it's not. I don't think it's given as much credit as it deserves for being a great stupid comedy.
Okay, yeah, great
stupid comedy.
Okay, it's emphasis on stupid comedy. 35270. Messages coming in for Ward Kidder. I do appreciate that. We'll ask him. I said, look, I just want I want the basics, because I think there's a lot of people. You've heard it's been made as though it's just such an easy decision, right? Perhaps it is. I don't know. I've never looked myself. So here's what's going to happen in about 20 minutes. It's going to be picturing me walking on to the lot of Vision Ford in Wapaton. And Ward's going to be the salesperson to me as to why, hey, you kicked the tire over there. I see you eyeing that silver one over there. Here's what you need to know about it. Here's when it comes to the garage, the setup you're going to need, the rechargeable, the reliability during the winter. So picture you are in that same position, that you're coming in with an open mind on an EV, an electric vehicle. What questions would you ask? Some of them coming in, great questions. I'd ask for Mike to text in. One of the many Green Bay Packers fans listens. Tyler, do you think the Diva wins the Super Bowl? I wanted Love to play, even though he only played a 500 football. I am super impressed that we have the number one disliked football player in the whole league. If he went to Denver, it would have shown the true distaste from people like me. They're slowly but surely changing the game for just the elites. It's Aaron Rodgers has gone. There are players that probably deserve more ridicule, that players that certainly have done more, I would say, disgusting things that have been allowed to come back. There was a wide receiver down in Atlanta who was away from the game. I bet $1,500 on the NFL as a player that was still on an active roster. He was away from non-football reasons, and I believe the story was he was out there, looking to take care of his mental health. Nobody can fault him for that, right? But he made a bet, or a couple of bets. I think it was $1,500 in total that he went online, in which the NFL, how many times, if you're watching, they have, hey, go throw some money at FanDuel's. And like all these online betting applications you can use for the NFL. You just can't really do that as a player. So he got caught. He's suspended for the entire year. Now you think about some of the other things. I mean, we're talking about assaults that other players in the NFL have done, and then they get a 6-game suspension. So I mean, the justice in the NFL is not equal when it comes to things that I think should carry much more of a heavy punishment, aside from throwing a bet. Now I know those are the rules in the NFL, and you know what, the repercussions now that he's got at least 1 full year suspension. If you're going to do that for betting, I think you've got to reevaluate what you're doing for some of these players that have been arrested on charges of assault. So there are players out there that have that mark of charged with assault that aren't somehow as disliked as Aaron Rodgers put himself in over the last year. I mean, it is just quite the turd in public perception, or at least the 30,000-foot view of it. I know some people that have followed Aaron Rodgers' career for a very long time that says, look at the way he disowned his family. This guy's all about himself. But that got the pedestal was raised for everybody to realize that. That's why I ask. I mean, they always say winning, changes all that. Is that true? Because he's all in. He's going to retire as a Green Bay Packer. He's going to be that quarterback. He's going to hopefully, in his mind, get you another ring out there. Tyler hate Rodgers, but would miss the rivalry with him. I'm curious if that's coming from a Vikings fan or a Bears fan. Because, for Vikings fans, in their mind, the big rivalry, of course, is Green Bay. I think if you ask Green Bay fans who their biggest rivalry is, it's Chicago, and Chicago agrees. Cannot stand Green Bay. If you have time this evening, and if you're not watching mindless television like I sometimes find myself doing, go on any social media to where there's a fan page that might be some satire of a Chicago Bears fan base, and just watch and chuckle along, because they they ain't happy with the news that Aaron Rodgers is coming back for a couple of years over there. Other messages in are about these electric vehicles. I think it's fair to reevaluate some of purchases now. I mean, that's what people are saying. Well, if you're going to ever have a time in which you're going to look at alternatives, wouldn't this be the case? Sure. But I think you can do that in conjunction with where, as I was saying yesterday, reality is now. That we haven't gone fully to the capability, the infrastructure isn't there to do some of what the ideals are. So you can certainly be discussing how you get to that, to where you have these ports, these chargers every, 30 miles, how you can have that battery that is so reliable on these electric vehicles, some of the alternatives there, but also understand that with the current state of things being as they are right now, you can still bolster up some of what needs to be done to maintain what we have without having that immediate hurt on families who are trying to stretch their paycheck just a little bit further. And you think about, not only is gasoline going to go up, everything that's being hauled by a truck going to go up as well. So this whole inflation period that we've been talking about as transition, meaning that, hey, there's going to be a hope at the end of that tunnel after things maybe settled down with this whole pandemic, the supply chain got back up going. This war, this invasion has had to have had a prolonged impact on where that end point was. So if we're thinking that maybe prices would come back down for food, maybe prices would come back down for anything else you're out there regularly buying, I don't see that happening, from my opinion now, for a little bit further on down the road, and who knows when that road comes to a stop. 237-5948, that's the Laney studio line. You can call in. Also, all these messages. I tell you what, I've got a whole list of questions here that you've sent in asking about electric vehicles. We'll throw those to a person who sells them and has been quite successful in doing so. Ward Cater down in Vision Ford is coming up. No Rusty Halverson today. In fact, he is on, if not maybe down in New Orleans, they have a show down there. He's going to be checking in from his destination down there, bringing you all the sights and sounds. I don't know if he's landed yet. So if he does call in, it'll be a nice little pleasant surprise for us, but I'm not expecting him today. So much more time for your calls, your texts coming up on electric vehicles, on the history of Europe. We'll talk sports, and everything else is on the table. I'm Tyler Axis. Afternoons Live just getting started right here on KFGO.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. is people are coming in. If they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it.
25, line Paul Jurgens. A Horace, North Dakota man has been arrested for 6 business burglaries in West Fargo and an attempted residential burglary in Castleton. 24-year-old Shelby Witt is facing felony burglary charges for break-ins in November and December of last year. Witt has an extensive criminal history going back to at least 2017 that includes assault, theft, and burglary. West Fargo, and Moorhead police were part of the investigation along with the Cass County Sheriff's Office. Devils Lake police say a body discovered outside an apartment building was found by a child who was outside playing. Chief Joe Kanowski says the body was that of a Native American woman. Kanowski says it's likely the body had been there for some time.
It wasn't something that was an immediate situation that took place within the last hours when she was found. It had to have been days due to the severe cold and whatnot.
An autopsy will be done to determine the cause of death and confirm the woman's identity. 25, this is KFGO News. '25, this is KFGO News. The Grand Forks City Council has approved a series of tax breaks to help bring a corn milling plant to the city. As has been the case with past meetings about the Fufeng project, residents showed up to voice opposition. They've been vocal about concerns over the environment and the company's ties to China. They're now promising to circulate petitions to place the proposal on the ballot.
Why is it not put to the vote of the city?
Because the citizens did vote when they elected us.
No, they didn't. Okay, you know what?
Councilmember Brett Weber made the motion to approve the incentive, saying the only complaints he has heard is the amount of water the plant would use, slave labor in China, and concerns about U.S. security.
The idea that the entire security of the future of the United States, the decision of 7 council members from a city of less than 100,000. If that were the case, we have a whole lot more to worry about than the development of a plant.
The incentive plan was approved on a 5-1 vote. The lead sponsor of a House bill to legalize sports betting in Minnesota says he's confident the state's tribes will drop their long-standing opposition and let it become law, saying they would be in control. Representative Zach Stephenson of Coon Rapids says he's met in recent months with leaders of all 11 tribes, and he wouldn't be pressing forward unless he's comfortable with that they'll support it in the end. The Minnesota Indian Gaming Association is withholding approval until the details are worked out. One of the longest-serving state lawmakers in the country is retiring from the North Dakota legislature. Republican Senator Ray Holmberg of Grand Forks was first elected in 1976. He's the most experienced legislator in the state and is tied as the longest-serving state senator in the country. The 79-year-old Holmberg says it was a difficult decision based on medical issues that do not give him the ability to accurately perform the work required and expected from his constituents. Fargo-Moorhead, partly to mostly cloudy this afternoon. We might see some scattered snow showers. We saw a little light snow earlier. Mostly cloudy tonight. Evening snow showers possible, about 4 for the low. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy and 14. 25, Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
No Rusty Halverson. Typically would be checking in with some egg-related news right now, but if you can't wait till tomorrow to get his live updates from New Orleans, simple. Just a couple clicks away. Go to kfgo.com. You click on that agriculture tab. You can learn about what he's been up to, what Sarah Heinrich's been working on, and all the latest from the markets to just agriculture news in general. kfgo.com. There's a reason why they're multi-award winning journalists, and it's all right there at a click of a button. We'll come back with Vision Ford and Award Cater right after the CBS National News. All these questions you sent in about electric vehicles, I will see what some of those answers are right after this.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Halverson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790
Couch
and
Potato Radio. Did you see that? It Takes Two. Doug here with the morning crew this morning. News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Access, your home.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
If you missed yesterday's show, we had a great conversation going. A lot of people calling in, texting in about price of gas, alternatives, all of that. And one of the suggestions from a fellow listener was reach out to somebody that actually sells electric vehicles. And you know what? We got just the guy for you. It's Ward Cater down in Vision Ford. Kind enough to join us right now here on Afternoons Live. Ward, appreciate your time on such short notice. How you doing, man?
Hey, Tyler, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. Thanks for asking here. Here's what here. Well, I'll set the stage for you, Ward, because this is kind of coming at you cold here. I'm walking on to the lot of Vision Ford down there. I say, you know what, Ward? I'm interested in an electric vehicle, and you're the sales guy for me, and you're going to explain. So that's the mindset I want this to be, and if that makes sense for you, that's your background here. So here's just kind of setting the stage here. People. With everything going on, there's been some talk, from high-profile figures. There's some people right here in the community saying, it's time to consider electric vehicles. And then the questions that kept pouring in were, are they affordable and are they reliable? So let's start with the affordability aspect. Down in Wahpeton down there, as far as comparable to, say, another average car price, are electric vehicles in that same realm? Walk me through that, Ward.
Yeah, they really are. To be specific, in my world, the Ford Lightning, which is coming out, it's 100% electric F-150. It is basically the same price. I mean, almost identical to the same price as our current internal combustion engine. So it's not, $1,000, $2,000 cheaper. They're right in the same ballpark.
When it comes to the F-150, before we get off that, because this was another question that came in about towing capabilities of, say, all right, I'm going down, I'm buying an F-150 electric, and I can't wait for summer. I've got a pontoon. I want to pull it out to a lake. Has there been any feedback on that reliability? Does it still have the same torque, all of that, as your combustible?
Yeah. So let me just kind of give you a big picture look at electric vehicles, whether it's my Lincolns or Fords. It's pretty standard. When you're driving an electric vehicle, I always tell people to kind of think about when you get on a golf cart. When you hit the throttle, even on a little electric golf cart, you have instant power, instant torque. It's just there. So when it comes to pulling a camper, a boat, an enclosed trailer, the electric vehicle is going to have more power, more torque. It does now, and it certainly will increase over the long term too, because it's instant. There's no transmission, kind of no motor revving up. There's no engine that's trying to build that power. It's instantly there. So it's a very, very simple vehicle to own, which I think as people get more and more educated, they're going to love this concept. So whether you're about the fuel economy or all the things going on in the world, the ownership is going to be so simple. It truly has 40% fewer parts in it. So to a consumer, that cuts down on a lot of things that can go wrong through the life of the ownership. It's just easy to own, easy to operate. In our world, you wake up in the morning, you have instant heat. The car's not warming up. You hit the button, nothing happens, and you have instant heat. I don't know that gets a lot better than that in the Northern Plains anyway. It's an amazing piece of technology.
Well, and that's kind of the other track this goes down is people are saying, well, could I afford it if I'm living paycheck to paycheck? And finding a way to make it work on the traditional combustible. Is this technology to the point to where you can afford it, that paycheck to paycheck? The other question is, how reliable in, say, North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota is it given this time of year, to where it gets colder out. There's block heaters in some of those old vehicles still, to where people, even if they buy a new combustible, they still want to have that added. The reliability factor is the other major component coming in. What's the latest there as far as the industry goes, saying, yep, it doesn't matter if you're Winnipeg, Wahpeton, or if you're down south somewhere. Give me an explanation, Ward.
Okay, so how that kind of works is currently we have a version of a lithium battery like you can buy at your local store. Obviously much more high tech, but it's still a version of that. So lithium batteries, they do very well in cold environments. Now, is there going to be a little bit of depletion in it? There certainly is. But the truth and reality is if you're driving a gas engine or diesel, any internal combustion motor, your fuel economy drops drastically when it's 25 below zero. I mean, it's just not as efficient. The electric vehicle actually won't have as much diminishment in the performance, the fuel economy, even though it's not fuel. It still has that efficiency. Batteries, they work great in the north. Where they're still developing and improving is for the hot, Arizona sun. Las Vegas in the middle heat of the battle of the summer, heat is more of a problem for batteries than anything. are cold. We've had a lot of them come and go through here just in the last year. We've had no problems whatsoever. People love them. You can start them in your garage. You can program them to start up in the morning so it's warm by 6:45 because there's nothing running. So there's no risk. There's no danger. They're not as affected by the climate as everybody thinks. But it's one of those questions that needs to be addressed and just people educated on it.
Well, that's why we reached out to you, and I'm getting quite the education already in the first couple of minutes here, Ward. You got some questions in from listeners that are curious about this as well. I'm going to throw those your way, and if you have an answer, that'd be great. And if not, we'll try again later on. Tyler, the question for Ward: if my garage only has a 120 for power, will that be enough to charge a car, or what do I need? Is there an adapter I can plug in for any 120 that comes in? Also, how much is a new battery pack? Any answers to those?
So I don't have an answer on the battery pack because obviously we haven't had to replace them. What I'll tell you has changed about the battery pack. So I used to be involved in Chevrolet, and they had a vehicle that had a huge battery pack under it, and it was one unit. So again, in my world, Ford and Lincoln, they're modular. So the car will actually tell a repair center that, hey, this cell is bad. So the replacement, the maintenance, the ownership, again, is drastically reduced from even 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago. As far as being able to plug it into your house, yeah, you can. You can plug it in the neighbor's house, too, when you go to bed. It will charge. Now, on 110, it takes more time. It'll take you certainly all night and part of tomorrow to really give you a solid charge. But there's other options. You can get these high-speed chargers to put in your home. It's just a small unit. I actually have two of them at the dealership that my customers are welcome to just come over and use. Or you can even get a higher one. It's a 70-amp charger, and it will charge our vehicles in about 15, 20 minutes. So the technology is coming really fast. If you compare a 15-minute charge, it's pretty close to going to the gas station, pumping, walking inside, getting a bottle pop or whatever you do and leave. So that technology just in the last 2 years has changed significantly, and it's continuing to change.
Yeah, by the time you pump the gas, and then they ask you, do you want to go for a car wash, and then are you a rewards member, and then do you want a receipt? Yeah, it starts to add up here. More messages coming in for you. Ward Caters, my guest, Vision 4 down in Wapton here. Tyler, my main concerns for electric vehicles would be the availability of charging stations, the amount of time to charge if traveling on vacations. Ward, you threw out the, about 15 minutes for some of those superchargers. And this is one of those, as you say, the technology is still advancing. I know in this last round of budgets, I think it was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, they're hoping to get more of those charging stations out there. From a sales standpoint, what are you hearing?
So the government, the last I heard, is committed in the short term to put an additional 100,000 chargers out there. So that's a lot, but it's really not, right? When you look at a single state and all of our communities. But what the vehicles do is let's say you're going to your grandmother's house in Bismarck, and I'm in Fargo. If I put her address in there into my GPS, which they all have, it will tell you if you need to stop and charge. So it's not going to let you run out. If you go blindly, it has a fuel gauge, just like an internal combustion. You have 32 miles left, so you can do that. But the car will also tell you where the closest charging station is and how long it's going to take you to charge it. There's a lot more charging stations out there than you realize. I'm in Wahpeton, as you said, and there's two just in Wahpeton alone for the public to use. And, of course, I offer two here, and I imagine there's other dealerships that are offering charging stations too. So right here, we probably have 6 stations available to our community alone.
Ward, you mentioned that there's not as many parts and components that would need maintenance, and that's going to save on cost. But let's say somebody does have one. Are there enough technicians out there to maintenance this? Is it a whole other specialty compared to combustible?
So it is a different specialty. It's a different skill set. But if from a dealership standpoint, we can't sell the car unless we have trained technicians. So can you stop at the local repair center and get help? At this point, probably not, to be honest. But if there's a franchise dealer out there, you have a very good chance that there's somebody trained and they have the equipment to do all the testing and the repairs right there.
Okay. Final question. Yep. The final question comes in, and this one might be a little difficult to answer. Tyler, how much per mile to drive an electric vehicle compared to gas? Do you have any thought on that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And you can actually go on the website, and I can try and find that link for you, Tyler, and send it to you.
Okay.
They will give you a comparison. So you can put in, right now we're at $3.79 a gallon or whatever we're at locally, and you can put in your cost per kilowatt, and it'll give you the comparison. So it's a very it's a very straightforward process, and it'll give you a good feeling. Yeah, it's not for everybody, that's for sure, but it's becoming for everybody very quickly.
Do you see
everything from delivery vehicles to agricultural world? I mean, it's there. Delivery vans, huge right now in the delivery world as far as getting products out.
Ward, I lied. I got two more questions. One comes in by
I'm ready.
One comes in by text, and one's just a personal question. The first one by a listener. What does it charge to? What does a charge cost?
So again, a little bit of loaded response back to you. It's based on your local electric costs. Let me get you some of that information, and I'll take a particular car I have and try and get you specifics on that. It's significantly less than gas, especially now. And hopefully right now is an exaggerated period, but let's talk, 2 months ago, the gas prices, it's still significantly less than that.
Okay.
So it's an easy process. And you'll notice, even in Fargo, there's Casey's. They have 10 charging stations at the gas station. A lot of truck stops have them. So it's becoming more and more the norm as you travel around the country.
Well, that goes into the last question that I have. And I promise this is the last one for you, Ward. I'll let you get back after it. Do you see this being the inevitable way that we're trending? That there's more of this going on? This, there's going to be an attempt, I hope, to mitigate some of this by using the combustible and making it more affordable at the gas pump through a number of measures. But in the long term, is this the trend you see industry-wide that, look, at the end of the day, at some point, most, if not all, will be electric?
It's definitely the direction we're going. To be specific, the state of California, by 2035, they won't legally be able to sell an internal combustion engine. So there's, they have a different commitment to getting things done out there, a different viewpoint. But I will also tell you, I just had a manufacturer call today, and they told us very specifically that in 3 years from today, we will sell more internal combustion engines than we are today. So just to lay the groundwork, the gas engine, the diesel engine is not going away, at least in the immediate future. But the electricity, the electrified vehicle, the different hybrids, the plug-in hybrids, the different versions in general are going to explode in their growth. There's huge demand for it.
Very good.
A lot of interest.
Ward, you gave me more of the time than what I asked for. I appreciate it. I tell you what, we'll do this again because I'm getting more questions about it, and you're the guy that I want to visit with about to answer those. Just answer the next time I call, all right?
You got it. Have a great day.
Yeah, you do the same, my man. Ward Cater, Vision Ford. Some of those questions coming in late, I apologize. I'm way behind my time. Got to get through this weather update from Too Tall Tom. Coming back to you right after this.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Halverson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that? From It Takes Two. Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Paul Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voice of Sports. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page. And send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up.
There's some great questions that have been sent in since we got off the phone with Ward Cater. And I tell you what, we'll have another conversation with him. This whole topic of what you're paying at the pump for gasoline right now, well, it's going to be even more top of mind the higher that price goes. And that's why I started off by saying, look, it's easy for somebody, Pete Buttigieg, for example, now the head of transportation in Washington, say, well, it's time to go buy electric. It's another if is it affordable and is it reliable in this part of the country where you're listening to me on 790 AM or, hey, we're back on 104.7 FM today as well at 100,000 watts, 100-mile radius. The real world questions of is it doable? It's one thing to have that ideal to get there, but if the market's getting there and the technology's getting better, a couple years ago, I never would have envisioned myself ever buying, I'm a pickup guy. I drive, no offense to Ward Cater. He sells Fords, and I drive Chevy for now. And, I never envisioned myself buying a Silverado that's electric, but if that's the way the market's going, then, of course, you have to have the intricacies of the accessories and the affordability and, quite frankly, the service available to make it work. Are we getting there? In time is what I just heard. We'll head back in time with John Cox, professor of history, next.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page. And send us a text anytime at 35270.
Halverson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that? From It Takes Two. Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Paul Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voice of Sports. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. is people are coming in. If they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
read the transcript of his, what I thought was deranged speech, justifying in his mind to the Russian people why he's invading their neighbor in Ukraine. We're going to have that conversation with Dr. John Cox right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, it is mostly cloudy, 24. I'm Paul Jerkins. A Horace, North Dakota man has been arrested for 6 business burglaries in West Fargo and an attempted residential burglary in Castleton. 24-year-old Shelby Witt is facing felony burglary charges for break-ins in November and December of last year. West Fargo, and Moorhead police were part of the investigation, along with the Cass County Sheriff's Office. With President Biden announcing that the U.S. will no longer import oil from Russia, Governor Walz is urging the legislature to quickly consider more actions against Russia.
The governor says additional actions could include directing the State Board of Investment to withdraw Minnesota's investments in Russian businesses and institutions, which he says would be consistent with previous actions prohibiting investments in Iran and Sudan. That request comes after Walz last week directed state agencies to terminate any contracts with Russian entities and not enter into any new agreements, a move that Minority Leader Melissa Lopez-Franzen says is strongly supported by Senate Democrats. Lopez-Franzen says she also supports the governor's call for the state to divest its Russian portfolio.
KFGO News correspondent Bill Werner in St. Paul. One of the longest-serving state lawmakers in the country is retiring from the North Dakota legislature. Republican State Senator Ray Holmberg of Grand Forks was first elected in 1976. He's the most experienced legislator in the state and is tied as the longest-serving state senator in the country. The 79-year-old Holmberg says it was a difficult decision based on medical issues that do not give him the ability to accurately perform the work required and expected from his constituents. More hunting licenses for elk will be offered by North Dakota's Game and Fish Department this year, but there will be fewer moose licenses. A bighorn sheep hunting season could also take place depending on the pending results of a summer sheep population survey. The status of that season will be determined September 1st. The state is making 563 elk licenses available for the fall hunt. That's an increase of 40 from last year. There are 404 moose licenses available, a decrease of 70. Hunter success during the 2021 season was 65% for elk, 80% for bighorn sheep, and 90% for moose. Mostly cloudy this afternoon, Fargo-Moorhead, partly to mostly cloudy, and then we'll stay mostly cloudy tonight, maybe some evening snow showers, about 4 for the overnight low. Tomorrow, 14 degrees, partly to mostly cloudy. Thursday, 16, partly sunny. Near 9 degrees for the high on Friday, partly to mostly cloudy. 21 Saturday, partly to mostly cloudy, maybe some light snow late in the day. Mostly cloudy on Sunday, another chance of light snow, and 32. 25, Paul Jerkins, News Radio, KFGO.
KFGO time is fast approaching 3:10 on a Tuesday afternoon. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a little while. You know, we've been watching and describing and debating what we're seeing, history unfold before our eyes over in Ukraine since the moment it happened. We've had Dr. Thomas Ambrosio talk about the international affairs of this. He taught me about international law, about this, this situation, how he's viewing it. But, there's a history here as well when it comes to East Europe. And Dr. John Cox, again, NDSU professor of that history, joins me in studio to hopefully give just a little bit more historical background. Dr. Cox, appreciate you coming to KFGO. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Tyler. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I don't even know where to begin because, at what point in history do you say, okay, well, from there to here is how we got here? Because, boy, there are so many roller coasters. I had mentioned during the crosstalk before we checked into Paul Jurgens, from Ronald Reagan saying in 83 that they're an evil empire. During Putin's speech, in which he's trying to justify, at least in his own mind, why he's doing this, saying that Ukraine it's not even a legitimate country. So you're the history professor. Okay. Teach me how in the hell we got here in Putin's mind and what Russia's doing.
Well, I love that nod to a history even earlier than Putin and then Reagan, and I'll jump right back to that. I just want to say that the first stop, not just for political scientists and journalists and policymakers on this war, but the first stop for historians also is just 2014, just 8 years back, because in that year, Putin, who had at that time been in power for a decade and a half, he launched a major incursion into Ukrainian territory, carried out a major violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, annexed this large peninsula dangling down into the Black Sea called Crimea, and also created and has since steered 2 para-states, 2 breakaway regions in the eastern part of Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk. This, in many ways, what we're seeing now with careful buildup and not just ideological preparation, but propaganda preparation and massive military preparation, this is a continuation, a ratcheting up of that conflict that he started earlier. If you go, the history of Ukraine and Russia is more easily described as a history of Ukrainians and Russians, because although these two peoples are closely related and intertwined and interrelated, sharing many common features of language. Ukrainian is a separate language, but it is very similar to Russian, or Russian is similar to it, depending on your perspective. Religious similarities, etc. Ukraine has almost never, in its long 500-600-year cultural history, separate cultural history, it has almost never had its own state. It's almost never been an independent polity. Russia has been, at first as Muscovy, and then as some earlier formations, goes back to the 1500s, 1400s as an independent state. Ukraine has been split between various neighboring larger empires.
So that's where, in my mind, when I think about the drawing of this border that is now Ukraine, you go back to where the lines were drawn. I mean, was this just arbitrarily done? And this is where, in Putin's mind or in the Soviet Union, saying, look, they took this from us. It was arbitrarily drawn after, this world war. I mean, is that some of the thinking as to, look, that was rightfully ours. They never should have been in existence in the first place. Walk me through that, Jim.
Indeed, that is an accurate observation. Most of the border that delineates Ukraine today, most of it was drawn in 1922 when the Soviet Union was formed after the Russian Civil War. There were changes made in the 1950s with the addition of Crimea, and in the mid-40s, right at the end of World War II, with the addition of some Slovak and Romanian territory. So the borders of Ukraine are recent. The statehood of Ukraine is recent, but the existence of its culture and of its nation. To a historian, a nation is not the same thing as a country or a state. A nation is the people. A nation is in the same way that I'm a preacher's kid, and my father always used to remind us children that when you drive down the road and you see a church, you actually see a church building, because the church, the ekklesia in Greek, is the people, the congregation, the believers, right? Well, a nation is the people who are, whether you believe in primordial nations or modern constructed nations, the people have these bonds of identity and culture, and then they bring statehood in tow with them. The Ukrainians don't really form a national movement that celebrates their cultural unity and then starts making political demands until the 19th century.
It's interesting you say that, because I think I can include myself as a casual observer of this region. I mean, just to where it's back of mind. I mean, we just had a Secretary of State in the previous administration saying that no American cares about what's going on in Ukraine. A lot's changed since then, and I think the entire world certainly does care now. But the surprise in the determination from the Ukrainian people to defend what they're calling their motherland, defend their country,
sure,
surprised some people. And I'm going to throw myself in that category, because what you just described makes more sense. It better understands why they are fighting so hard against this invasion by Putin.
You bet. One thing I mean, as a historian, I'm an East Europeanist, a Balkanist especially, but that means that I work with nationalism day in and day out. Just because Ukrainian nationalism is of more recent vintage does not make it A, less legitimate, or B, less ferocious, fierce, stubborn, resilient, robust. There are plenty of examples of nations, the peoples in Europe even being formed in the 20th century. I'm thinking of the Macedonians and the Bosnians as a political entity in nearby Yugoslavia. So the fact that it's not meant to throw shade on Ukraine's national project to say they didn't have their first grammar until 1818 and their first dictionary until 1905, because research in those fields was prohibited by the Tsarist regime.
Dr. John Cox, our guest professor of East European history right here at North Dakota State University. This part of the world has seen a lot of turmoil. I mean, you've taught it, you've studied it. I don't know how to ask the question as to, to this point here. I mean, this has been described as the largest, European battle since World War II.
It is very much. It is.
So, I'm curious how this relates to that period of time. I mean, this is now. I mean, is it a direct result of that, or is this just Putin in his mind trying to reclaim his part of history?
None of this was inevitable, and most of this is not desired by the Russian people. Certainly not in its form. Historians, we always shy away from any kind of intimation of inevitability. World War II didn't create these problems. There are three basic explanatory models, if we want to go there, for why Putin is doing this, and I can summarize them very simply. The first, the least popular, but who knows if history will come back to this, Putin is trying to distract his own people and to secure the stability of his regime by shutting down potential democratic movements in both Ukraine and Belarus. Second explanation, favored by my colleague and friend, Dr. Ambrosio, whom you interviewed recently, is that this is Putin's effort to blunt the expansion of NATO. I belong to the third explanatory group of this so far, which is that this is a particular kind of Russian nationalism that does not aim at restoring the USSR and definitely has nothing to do with communism or Bolshevism or anything that Putin was raised on. And it is a very particular kind of Russian nationalism that doesn't call for Russians to take over the entire world or all of Europe, but to recoup places that have now drifted from Russian control where Russian populations live in large numbers. Ukraine is, depending on who you ask, 20 to 30% Russian speaking. Many of those people identify as Ukrainians politically, but ethnically as Russians. Putin sees this as his job to reunite them.
Well, and I'm going to take a break here, and I want to come back to that part, because the resistance you're seeing is going to say, well, he's going to have a hell of a hard time reuniting a country that doesn't want him there in the first place. But also that nationalism part you talk, the isolation. I just got done saying, look, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, you've got all these banks, you got everybody saying, look, if you are there, you're on your own, you're isolated. What does that do internally? You got more time for me? Very good. Dr. John Cox, professor of East European history from NDSU. More with him. If you got a question about this, comment 35270. You can send that into the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. More of this conversation right after this.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11. And volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Culberson here with another Don of our News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that? It Takes Two. Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Jerkins News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Force.
Too tall, Tom.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Cox, my guest, he's a professor of East European history at NDSU, and I left off where I wanted to go, but you know what? We got questions coming in or comments from listeners here. This one, I'll have you address that. Tyler, I don't buy the professor's opinion. Pretty sad attempt at, quote, reuniting the Ukrainians with their countrymen when they're bombing their homes and killing them indiscriminately. Your response to that, Doctor?
That's an excellent observation, and I didn't quite mean that. Part of the Russian project here is to neutralize Ukraine politically as a sovereign state, to either to blunt NATO's expansion or at least to get Ukraine to cough up these territories where the majority of its Russian population lives. These are the areas that the Russians are interested in annexing. Since that initial plan to sort of carry out a coup in Kyiv has been foiled by the Ukrainians, and by a very, very strong and unified Western reaction with not just sanctions, but lots and lots of weapons flowing into Ukrainian soldiers' hands. Most of us think that the Kremlin is changing its plan, its political aims, its end game here, and probably will have to carry out some sort of occupation of much of the country, probably not of all of the country. And that will include lots of areas, at least temporarily, that are not ethnically Russian and where they, at this point, are realizing they're not going to be welcome.
Another question along these same lines here. Tyler asked Dr. Cox if Putin's argument for, quote, saving the Russian people in Ukraine is similar to Hitler's claims in Austria, Czechoslovakia, etc. In your opinion.
Right. I'm not ready to make too many Second World War comparisons yet. I appreciate that question. That shows some good historical knowledge about the 1940s. The claims are not unrelated, but an example, a comparison, an analog I find more compelling is what Serbia was doing in the 1990s, the early 1990s, late 1980s, with the parts of Yugoslavia that were rapidly spinning out of control.
Very good. I know we're getting up against the clock here, and I told you I'm keeping you longer than what I asked for.
Fair enough.
I'm glad that you nodded and say, okay, if I must. One is the occupation that you just talked about, changing aims. I mean, I don't know. The intelligence on our side was spot on. The buildup, the intention, the resistance, I think, as you said, has thwarted what Putin's plan to come in and within 3 days take over Kyiv. And then guess what? Ukraine's ours. You're seeing the resistance from the Ukrainian people to where even if they were to capture Kyiv, it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be easy to maintain. So, I mean, is there anything related in history that shows what he would do or what Russia would do to make sure that, hey, you know what, you are under our control now?
Well, This is unfortunately an increasingly likely scenario, and it is quite a ghastly scenario. Look at what the Russians did in combination with Bashar al-Assad's forces in Aleppo, and look at what they did inside their own country in Chechnya, the capital of which, Grozny, they absolutely leveled, made a desert and called it peace in the early years of Putin's reign. I think right now, Kyiv and Odessa, second major city, third largest city in the country, have a partial exclusion from terror bombing tactics that might begin, carpet bombing or other things, because those areas are very, very important to Russians culturally, historically. But other cities, Kherson, Mariupol, Kharkiv, other places, may end up being demolished to make a point to the Ukrainians.
That adds a whole other layer that I want to get into then as far as what a NATO response would be. I mean, I couldn't imagine even the American public that says, look, we don't need to be the policeman of the world anymore. There's a lot of people nodding their head said, we've done that long enough. If you're watching carpet bombing, entire cities being leveled, families being murdered, that you can't sit back. I'm going to ask you that plus isolation of Russian citizens after this, all right?
Okay.
Dr. John Cox, he's taking your comments, your questions as well. 35270. You can send those in. I've got more time with him. I'm going to get you caught up with KFGO News. Paul Jurgens. Getting no Rusty Halverson today. He is out. He's down in New Orleans. He'll be checking in live from down there throughout the remainder of the week. He is down at a conference to get you some more egg-related news from there. But if you can't wait, KFGO.com, you can click on that agriculture tab. I'm Tyler Axis. You are listening to Afternoons Live on 790 AM and 104.7 FM, KFGO.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
News and weather this hour brought to you by AirServe Esser Plumbing and Heating, the people you know and trust right in your community.
Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy, 24. Hi, Paul Jurgens. West Fargo police and the Cass County Sheriff's Office say they have tied a horseman to a series of burglaries. 24-year-old Shelby Witt is accused of a half-dozen break-ins at businesses in West Fargo last November and December. He has also been linked to an attempted residential burglary in Castleton. Sheriff Jesse Johnner and West Fargo Police Chief Dennis Otternes say the collaborative work of their departments, along with assistance from the Fargo and Moorhead Police Departments, led to the arrest of Witt. A man who split his time between the U.S. and Ukraine helping arrange adoptions of children with medical needs, including a number of North Dakota, has died amid the fighting in the war-torn country. Serge Zevlever was shot and killed by Russian soldiers when he volunteered to check on a commotion outside a Kyiv bomb shelter. That was in late February. He is thought to be one of the first American casualties of the war. Zevlever and his team were instrumental in facilitating the adoptions of a number of Ukrainian children who found homes with families in North Dakota. Natalie Maxwell of Mandan, who adopted 3 Ukrainian children with Zevlever's help, spoke of his legacy.
And he just lived his life fighting for the most vulnerable, fighting for kids with disabilities in Ukraine that were either orphans or abandoned because of their disabilities.
Maxwell says Zevlever's team is still working to protect and evacuate orphans in and around Kyiv. Fargo-Moorhead 24, this is KFGO News. .24 degrees. This is KFGO News. Devils Lake police are investigating after a body was found behind an apartment complex. Police Chief Joe Kanowski says the body was found by a child. He says it appears the body, that of a Native American woman, had been there for some time. Kanowski says a medical examiner will determine the cause of death. U.S. Bank Stadium has agreed to pay part of a $1.2 million settlement to a Wisconsin man whose foot was injured at a Garth Brooks concert in 2019. The man and his wife sued the owner of the stadium, its operators, and security personnel after a large steel hydraulic barrier was lowered onto his foot outside a gate. He sued for his permanent disability and past and future medical expenses. His wife sought compensation for loss of companionship. Golf displays in Fargo has seen an increase in business amid the crisis in Ukraine. They were down to their last Ukrainian flag. Korogomp says they've sold about 20 flags, and people are still coming in looking to buy one.
Yeah, we have had there. It's really too bad. We like to keep a lot of most countries, almost every country, flags in stock all year round. But unfortunately, we're currently out of stock. This is kind of what we're down to. But we have some more coming in.
A bill that provides immunity for campground owners whose guests encounter the risks of outdoor camping is headed for the South Dakota governor's desk. The legislature has approved the bill that cuts the risk of lawsuits for campground owners who say they've been sued for acts of nature beyond their control, such as bee stings and mosquito bites. The legislation has a long list of inherent risks, including trees and tree stumps, uneven terrain, weather, wild animals, roots, ruts, mud, sand, and the absence of streetlights. Fargo-Moorhead will be mostly cloudy tonight, a bit breezy yet. A scattered evening snow showers. KFGO. Meteorologist Tom Szymanski is expecting about 4 for the overnight low. Tomorrow 14, partly to mostly cloudy. Thursday near 16 degrees, a partly sunny day. Wind picks up in the afternoon. Just 9 Friday, mostly cloudy and windy, partly to mostly cloudy. Also Friday, a chance of flurries. Fargo-Moorhead mostly cloudy, 24 degrees. Paul Jurgens, News Radio. KFGO.
International Women's Day, playing all your female musicians. Send those into 35270. You want to request them, we'll play them between now and 5 o'clock. We'll get you caught up in national news headlines, CBS. When we come back, Dr. John Cox, NDSU, he's a professor of East European history. Messages come in, questions. I appreciate all those. I'll throw them his way. What I've got is the isolation of the Russian people. If you start seeing carpet bombing of Ukrainian cities, those families in there, what's NATO's response? You kind of get the feeling they were built for this, right? We'll get his take on that right after this.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. You know, and all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. You know, that's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Dear
Mighty
Kansas
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that
from It Takes Two.
Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voice of Sports.
Too tall,
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for keeping it locked in. I'm joined by my guest, Dr. John Cox, NDSU. He's a history professor specializing in Eastern Europe. Of course, this is where we're talking about Ukraine, Putin, Russia. It's all on the table here. And, Doctor, one of the things that you'd mentioned about what you thought was part of Putin's plan, this Russian nationalism. Some people were addressing, hey, how is reuniting? It's not really if you're bombing people you're trying to, rule over, however you want to put that. But I think about the isolation. I brought up McDonald's. I brought up some of the corporate world. They're leaving. I mean, we're cutting off. We're banning imports of Russian oil, which is a big funder of, the Federation. There's all these things that are really just leaving them on a, metaphorical island. What's that do for that population, then, which we don't know if they even support this invasion in the first place?
Right. The limited polling that we have says that most Russians do support the invasion as currently conceived and given their imperfect knowledge of it. But these sanctions are massive. They're unprecedented in world history. They are going to have a catastrophic effect on the Russian economy because every Volkswagen factory that stops producing, every IKEA that stops shipping things in and out, et cetera, is going to idle all the support industries and all the truck drivers and all the diners where the workers used to eat. And it's not just a matter of suddenly they can't buy Western goods anymore. It's going to have ripple effects through the economy. These effects may well hit rural Russia first, or small towns and small cities. And there are reasons to think that Putin's grasp his security control over some of the far-flung states or federal units within the Russian Federation is shaky, and this may be where resistance movements to Putin first happen. I do not think that he will be dumped out of power in the coming months, but this could begin a long series of conflicts inside Russia.
Is that the intent of these sanctions, to cause so much turmoil internally that, you know what, we can't do it through NATO, we can't do it from U.S. troops, but maybe internally they'll be so down, they'll be so furious as to his actions leading to this that that's the hopes of these sanctions?
Definitely. The short version, and one that most scholars don't think is the most likely one, though, is that these oligarchs, these extremely wealthy tycoons, of which Putin is one, that they have Putin's ear somehow, and when they find they can't get to their yachts or they can't go visit their kids at Cambridge or Harvard, that they're going to somehow tell Putin to call off the dogs of war. I don't think that's likely. I don't think they have his ear anymore. I think it's the common people and the middle classes of Russia, the working and middle classes of Russia, that are going to feel the long-term effects of this and may take to the streets. They may also initially at least blame the West for making their lives miserable. Why do you in the West misunderstand what we were doing in Ukraine? Why have you been out after us ever since Gorbachev started disbanding the USSR, et cetera? Putin definitely wants his propaganda machine to make that point. But enough Russians are, obviously it's a sophisticated and very diverse country with an enormous number of VPNs and other ways to outrun the internet censorship that Putin has in place now. And I think eventually it is certainly possible that they will blame him for their misery.
Back on the other side of this border, the invasion in Ukraine, you mentioned, because somebody differing with your opinion, and you elaborate a little bit more, saying the force will come down, leveling of cities potentially is what could happen. I mean, that's a level of escalation that is, I think, worst case scenario. And I mean, you being a professor of the Eastern Europe, I mean, there is alliances, there are borders there that seem, in my opinion, to have been established saying we're not going to allow that to happen. So, I mean, through your historical perspective, if that were to happen, and we've seen that happen in his history before, does NATO have to then act? Do you see a scenario in which, okay, watching on CNN or Fox News here in America saying, you know what, we can't stand for this anymore. It's time to not only supply weapons, it's time to actually use these weapons.
Well, the NATO's treaty obligations extend only to its membership, and Ukraine is not a member.
Correct.
So what we could have in the event of a major escalation of the atrocity level beyond what it already is in Ukraine is public opinion in NATO countries and all over the world demanding that the UN or the U.S. or NATO do something, do more. It would come through that channel. It would not come through any activation of the legal apparatus of NATO. Unfortunately, it's not in the U.S.'s interest, as far as Ukraine goes, to get in a full-blown war with Russia. There are ways by which a limited exchange of hostilities with Russia could happen. For instance, right now we are shipping Javelins and Stingers and other things across the border as fast as we can. You probably all read in the headlines today that we're arranging for Poland and other countries to ship some of their 1980-era MiGs into Ukraine, where they already know how to fly them. If the Russians get really tired of us arming their opponents, it is possible that they will lash out at us first. There are even some really scenarios that are quite frightening about just how far could it even happen to the level of a tactical nuclear weapon, not a strategic weapon, not a missile bound for St. Louis, but a battlefield nuclear weapon equivalent to many, many tons of TNT. Could that possibly be used by the Russians in a single instance to make a point about what a superpower they still are? I think those kinds of, if they lash out at the supply lines, or if they up the ante so much with a tactical nuclear weapon, I do think intervention will happen, military intervention.
Well, and that you just answered a question that came in by text, but I'll just to acknowledge what sort of risk is the U.S. assuming in arming Ukrainian nationals in its conflict with Russia? You just addressed that. This other one came in quite a while ago. Thanks for being patient out there. 35270 is the Ag Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. Tyler, can you ask Dr. Cox, when and how does Putin get charged with war crimes? Now, I know we're talking about the potential of what escalation could look like, but there's already been allegations that war crimes have been committed. I mean, how and when, if the evidence is there, does this unfold?
I don't think Putin will ever be on trial in The Hague or in Strasbourg or anywhere else for war crimes. It could be that some of his commanders, it's also unlikely that individual soldiers at this point could be tried for war crimes, although, again, if atrocities continue to mount, possibly. What could happen is that a Russian colonel or a Russian general gets captured. Several have been killed already, so obviously they're in country. If they were to get captured, then, and if the documentation were there, they might be put on trial eventually.
When it comes to Russia being a superpower, you used that term just a minute ago. I think that was the perception going into when you had the amass of 150,000 troops on the border, that, okay, this is going to be taking place in 3 days. Kyiv was going to be controlled by Russia. That hasn't been the case. I mean, the reporting, and take it with a grain of salt if it's coming, of course, from the battlefield, when it comes from some sources. Because if you get it from TikTok, I've had to tell you every day at 4 o'clock, it's probably not true. But when you see stalled out convoys, when you see people walking away from this battle, I mean, is Russia a superpower beyond just having nuclear weapons?
Probably still, but barely. The Russian military has underperformed. The Russian planners misgauged, and the Ukrainian military is overperforming, and NATO and the EU have, in my job, done an absolutely brilliant job in pulling together quickly and decisively. There have been a lot of things that one would not necessarily have predicted.
Got a call for you. 237-5948 is the Laney studio line. I'll have you put those headphones on there. That's me buying time. Then let's get to Greg. Greg, thanks for calling in. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, it time just kind of goes back and repeats itself here in a very sad way. Back in World War II, this is timely. Poland, the country, Warsaw, for that matter, Warsaw Ghetto, Jewish people. Toward the end of the war, the world sat back and watched the Jewish people in the Warsaw Ghetto liquidated, exterminated. They held on to the last, very, very end, and that was in World War II. The Russians and the Germans coming from both directions, and now Poland is taking 780,000 was the last count of these refugees, and Poland is coming to the aid of their neighbor, not even a NATO neighbor for that matter, but a neighbor nonetheless. And looking back, World War II, the horrible things that went on, and especially Poland, for instance, that country was annihilated, and basically the world sat back and watched that country get annihilated, and now they're coming to the rescue of another country. It's just kind of funny how things work out, huh?
Yeah. Greg, thanks for the comments there. I think what he's getting at is, have we learned from similar moments in history?
It's an important angle to pursue. First of all, the Warsaw Ghetto, just one point of correction, was attacked and annihilated by the Germans, not by the Russians. The country of Poland itself was attacked from both directions in 1939. It's true. Europe failed to respond in coherent and decisive ways between 1992 and 1995 in the wars of Yugoslav succession, as we call them. The war, first of all, the first major war was in Croatia and then in Bosnia, and that was an absolute mess, an absolute human rights and military nightmare. And I have to think that the Europeans have learned some lessons about early intervention, et cetera, there. But above all, what's different in this case, I think, is the fact that Russia is the second largest nuclear power in the world, and that the existence of NATO and not just the expansion of NATO, but NATO being right there in Poland, as you say, that this raises the potential for accidental or calculated superpower warfare, and that potential for mass destruction of an entire continent was not there in the Yugoslav context, for instance.
5 more minutes. I need 5 more minutes from you, Doctor.
Okay, and then I have another commitment.
There you
Sorry,
go. Dr. John Cox, when we come back, we'll wrap up right after this.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Halverson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen, Couch
790.
Potato Radio. Did you see that from It Takes Two? Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page. And send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that kind of
what I asked for, so I just want to say publicly thank you, Dr. John Cox, for giving me more time. I asked for 20, you gave me 55. The whole world's watching this unfold because it's history, it's a war. With that, before I let you go, get on to your other obligations, what do you want to leave this audience with?
I want to call attention, first of all, to the human toll of this war. The human suffering. The Ukrainian people bear no responsibility for this outbreak of hostilities, and they are the ones who are going to suffer for months and have their economy shattered for decades because of this. There are over 2 million refugees currently, and those are the ones who have crossed an international border. There are many more than that within Ukraine. I know I have acquaintances who are hosting people from other parts of the country there, et cetera. I think we should always bear in mind that it's good to look for explanatory models. It's good to geostrategize. And, of course, we have to think about our security policy, our role in NATO, and what would happen if there were eventually a hot war with Russia. But this starts with, I think, a recognition of the suffering and an attempt to help through Doctors Without Borders or whatever other organization you feel like sending resources to. The second thing I would like to call attention to is the misuse of history on the part of Russian propagandists, Russian political leaders, etc. It's a great lie that Ukraine is not a real nation and that they don't deserve a real country. And there are wonderful books of history out there. There's really good reporting. There are all kinds of resources. If anyone wants to contact me over email at my NDSU email address, I'd be happy to share some resources with you. Ukraine is a real nation, and of course it deserves a real country. And there are interesting, unique historical issues in Ukrainian history, and they are closely intertwined with the Russian people culturally and historically and economically. But this doesn't lend itself. This should not lend itself to political abuse on this scale. This is outrageous.
Well, I can tell by the amount of interaction that's in our text club that the listeners have appreciated your time just as much as I have. And this is tragically not going to end anytime soon by the looks of it. And
I think this is not only a major and consequential conflict, I think it is going to be a long one.
Well, if as this continues to unfold, I'll probably be reaching back out. I've enjoyed this so much. I've took so much more of your time, and
your questions were excellent, and thank you to all the viewers and their questions.
Well, I appreciate it, and we'll do this again soon. Dr. John Cox, NDSU, you know what? He's a professor of history, but in particular, professor of East European history. Knows all about this. Thanks for all your questions coming in. Here's what's coming up. Final hour, it's you, me, this microphone, your cell phone. You can call me on the Laney studio line at 237-5948. I'll read some of your thoughts at 35270. That's the Eye Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. I'm Tyler Axton. This afternoon's live is rolling on. We're going to be with you until 5 o'clock this Tuesday afternoon. Keep it locked into KFGO.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio.
Did
you see from It Takes Two?
Doug
Miller with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio. Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. The hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
You turned it up when you're driving around, or if you had your boombox. Give me this over I Saw the Sign any day. Good choice. We're playing all-female musicians. Artists International Women's Day is today. I want to thank all your messages in about Dr. John Cox. I assure you we will have him on again as this unfolds. It is 4:05. That means it's time for a fact checker at 4. And this one, I fell victim to it. These are the things that you probably see online. You see it on your social media. People sharing, laughing, liking, commenting. Not all of them are true. This one, I'm sad to tell you, is not true. The claim was a Ukrainian TikToker shows you how to drive an abandoned Russian armored vehicle, a tank. Not true. The woman is driving an armored vehicle, yes, but she's Russian, and the clip was from 2021. So it's not something that's happened in Ukraine. Let's get you caught up with some local headlines with Paul Jerkins in the KFGO News Center. Whatever you want to talk about this whole last hour, it's you, me, this microphone, your cell phone. I'm Tyler Axton. Stick around.
KFGO News, 24 degrees. The U.S. Attorney's Office for North Dakota says it has reached a settlement with the company that owns Jefferson Bus Lines to resolve a claim that it violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. A passenger filed a complaint saying a driver would not let them use their walker on the lift on the rear of a bus and that they had to walk the length of the bus and go down the stairs. An investigation found that between January of 2017 through early August of 2020, Jefferson Lines received 24 disability-related customer complaints. Under the agreement, Jefferson Lines will better train its drivers and require that they know how to operate mobility equipment. The equipment must be tested weekly. The company will pay $5,000 to the passenger whose complaint prompted the investigation. A Horace, North Dakota man has been arrested for 6 business burglaries in West Fargo and an attempted residential burglary in Castleton. 24-year-old Shelby Witt is facing felony burglary charges for break-ins in November and December of last year. Witt has an extensive criminal history going back to at least 2017 that includes assault, theft, and burglary. West Fargo, and Moorhead police were part of the investigation along with the Cass County Sheriff's Office. Police responding to a report of a weapon at a suburban Minneapolis high school today gave the all-clear after a 3-hour search found nothing suspicious. A lockdown was put in place at Burnsville High School when the search began. No weapon was found and there were no injuries. After school activities were canceled, Burnsville is about 15 miles south of Minneapolis. A low value assigned to caregiving is the first bullet point in a report on women's concerns from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. Attorney General Keith Ellison formed the Advisory Task Force on Women's Economic Security.
I don't know where these people come from who say, oh, yeah, it's everybody's job to care for the next generation, our children and grandchildren. But then you don't want to reward the people properly who actually do it.
The report also points to a power imbalance in the workplace, the economy as a whole, in policymaking, and concludes that women's safety is not prioritized. There are 115 recommendations in that report. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy tonight. Maybe some evening snow showers. Our low about 4 degrees tomorrow. 14 degrees for the high, partly to mostly cloudy. Thursday, partly sunny, 16. Mostly cloudy, 24. Paul Jerkins News Radio, KFGO.
I'm going to talk about Shania in a moment, but we had a caller off air. This is more important. That says between Mapleton and Castleton westbound. Now, there's about a 4-mile stretch that's pure ice. And I know that wind was blowing out there earlier today. So be mindful of that. Some of the travel impacts I think that were most prominent were up in the Devil's Lake Basin, as we're hearing from Too Tall Tom earlier today. We'll get you that weather update here this hour as well of what can be expected in the upper Midwest here. But again, it sounds as though there's about a 4-mile stretch between Mapleton and Castleton on the westbound lane where it's pure ice. And that would make sense the way that wind was blowing in. It was warm enough to, how cliche, but boy, that sun had some power earlier. You know, it might be, if you look at that thermometer, it might be 20, I wasn't listening to Jergy, 28? 24. Okay, I was only off by 4. That ain't bad. But that sun's out there warming it up. So it was getting to that point to where if you get any of that blowing snow, it's going to stick and make conditions not ideal. Any other Road Warrior reports, we take those first and foremost. 237-5948, Delaney Studio Line. And, of course, the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. Short code is 35270 there. We had our conversation, and you know what? I just can't thank Dr. Cox enough for staying with us for that entire hour to just break down this situation, this war, this invasion. And I didn't get to all your comments because we just didn't have enough time. He had another obligation that deals with this. We will have him back on to give you hopefully an update on what he's going to do with some people that are impacted by this invasion as well. But we can discuss them amongst ourselves here. Tyler, does your guest think there would have been a way for us to be in Ukraine doing military exercises while Russia was doing their military exercises to prevent all this? Obviously, I can't speak for the professor of European history, but that question will always be there. Could there have been more done? Whether that was sanctions ahead of time, that's an accusation that was thrown out there saying, what do we wait so long for to instill these historic sanctions that have certainly crippled the Russian economy? Had we done it sooner, would it said, hey, would it have prevented it? We don't know. We'll never know. The activity as far as training exercises, again, don't know. We'll never know if that would have deterred. Or here's the flip side for you. You know, one of the things that people have talked about why NATO hasn't been involved to this point is that gives Putin an excuse. It gives Putin that out saying, we told you the West is to blame. We told you that they've had it out against Russia. And look, they're in Ukraine preparing that army to attack us. That's the flip side from me just as a little old talk show host as to why that could have gone perhaps the other way. We will never know. I think it's an interesting question. The whole what if, had we done this, could it led to of that, prevented all this? We'll never know. But I tell you what, we'll continue having this conversation, whether it's the what ifs or what nows, as this invasion continues to move forward. Not as rapidly as what they had thought, but more road reports out there, Eric?
Yeah, another road report, this time from the Minnesota side. Caller Mike said that 75 heading north of Moorhead up towards Georgetown, when you get about 2 miles north of Moorhead, gets really icy. Also, County Road 34 from Georgetown to Felton, very icy. So apparently this wind is shining things up rapidly out there.
Polishing it up, and not in a good way. And I know that we were told from Too Tall Tom, who's been spot on all the time, but in particular when it comes to this winter weather, throughout the course of this, what feels like a lifetime of winter in North Dakota, Minnesota, that this might be the case. You know, not that there was going to be any precip that was going to be causing issues, but quite frankly, the fact that this wind that has not stopped since as far back as I can remember is going to be blowing around some of this. And it doesn't matter how much of a crust there is on some of it. If that's wind strong enough, you know the results. It's going to be impacting those roadways. So you keep them coming in. We'll get you home safely together. We can't do it alone here. I have no windows to the outside world inside the KFGO studio. More road reports.
Yeah, another road report, again from Minnesota. 32 south of Uland is very, very slippery. So it seems to be all over the place. They're starting to get these slippery spots.
I'm getting flashbacks to, 3 weeks ago when 4 o'clock struck and it was nonstop road reports. But we're a service to you. That's what we're here for. We will get those out as quickly as what we can. Quickly before, Shania Twain, you played that as a bump in. I see people asking requests now as far as female artists. I was down in Nashville, and if you have not been, please go, especially if you're a music connoisseur. It doesn't matter if you're a country music fan or not. You go down there, every establishment down on the strip has a live act at any given time of day. But we went to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and the displays in there was phenomenal. I regret not getting into the Johnny Cash standalone building, but they had a whole display of Shania Twain. And, you know, how you picture people on TV as far as stature, you know, and then to see the outfits they use in those music videos. She is such a short woman.
Yeah.
I know, it's like,
yeah,
I knew it, but until you see the wardrobes that they had, so my word.
Yeah, when I think that happens frequently when you see musicians and actors.
Actors, yeah. Like
that
if Tom Cruise, for whatever reason, came through the KFGO studio, I know he's short. I bet you I'd be stunned at the height of Tom Cruise. And that's what happened when I saw Shania Twain. Not a story anyone cares about, but I had to get it off my chest. 237-5948. That's how you can get whatever you want off of your chest, whether that's road reports, this invasion, Castleton, Sugar Beet, crushing. Okay, Cass County's acted, taxes, all that stuff. There's all this chatter that some people got flown out on a private jet to check out a similar plant. I mean, if there's people that are investing in this, people that are part of it, have a private jet to get you from this area to go look at another one. Do they need a tax break? We can talk about that and so much more right after this here on KFGO. I think I've made it pretty clear where I stand on the Castleton proposed soybean crushing plant near Castleton, is I guess how it's being described. But if you look at the map, it can't be any much more near without being in Castleton. And what I've made clear is, one, I support the project, but I do also support the residents saying, look, we understand this. We get it. We know what it can do, but does it have to be right here? Now, that's one of the questions that they're posing, and I think they've got a right to do so. They're going to be living, and they call it home already. And number two is about any tax situation or any tax breaks that's going to be used to entice, to build, to whatever it is, to get this soybean crushing plant completed near Castleton. Now, yesterday, Cass County Commissioners approved a 15-year tax break for the proposed soybean crushing plant near Castleton. Now that's on the county commission. There's going to be other authorities that need to be determined as far as zoning, permitting of the plant, and that's where it comes down to, townships when it comes down to Castleton. Now, when it comes to the tax side of this, I just want to ask you about the optics, because what was brought to me just a couple of days ago is, for some of those concerns, I think those rightful concerns, those rightful questions from residents of, what this plant will produce, and as far as omitting of smells, lights, traffic, all of those, to where, okay, one way to maybe get some answers is to visit one that's already out there doing this. And there are other soybean crushing plants in the upper Midwest doing this. Now they want to add one here. And you know what, for all of you in agriculture out there, and I understand the value, the economic impact it can bring and the long term for any given area as well. But if you're going to be bringing out some of those decision makers, say on the city commission of Castleton, to go view this, and you are an investor of this plant, and you're going to use your private jet from 19th Avenue North, I mean, that's where the questions on these tax breaks, I think, in a lot of people's minds come in. That if you have investors that are taking you on private jets to go view other ones, that, okay, if you can afford the private jet fare to, own this, to utilize this, do you need the tax break? And that's a question that was posed to me from people living in that area. And I pose it to you. Now, quite frankly, the fact that Cass County Commissioners already approved the 15-year break would lend you to believe, well, you know what, that question doesn't carry as much now because the decision's already been made when it comes to that tax break. But you can broaden that out to a variety of other projects. I've had people text in to this program a number of times, and we talk about tax breaks for things, or using tax dollars to construct things. One thing that gets brought up a lot, stadiums, for example. And, I think of as a Moore Lanning from Moorhead, that instrumental of getting U.S. Bank Stadium built. Because you have these big interests that there are other people, there are other communities out there that would be willing to give up a little bit. We'll give you an incentive to come here. When deep down, as taxpayers, that in some of those situations, those owners can afford to do it without you giving up some tax breaks to accomplish it. So, I mean, it's this whole evaluation of the way of which we go about doing this business, not just isolated to a soybean crushing plant near Castleton, knowing the benefits that would provide for agriculture, for this rural economy here. But I mean, even downtown Minneapolis and stadiums. Okay, you get that, but do you want to prevent from, all right, we're going to sign off and giving you a 15-year tax break to go ahead and accomplish it? I think that had been the train of thought for a number of people, but I think that number of individuals is growing and continues to grow as you watch, all these things getting breaks, and then you wonder, well, why are my property taxes not getting a break? Why isn't a break being done for A, B, or C for the people that have lived here, that have called this community home, that are raising their families here. Why is it always given to that individual outside of this area? And some of those that, quite frankly, on face value, can afford it without the break. Your thoughts at 237-5948. That's the Laney studio line. You could also text into 35270. The optics of it alone is what brought enough people to end up reaching out to me saying, if you can fly out city members on the council to come out and check out, hey, here's what you would be building next to your town. So that's on a private jet, and with some of the other big names that are allegedly associated with it, did they need the tax break? Do you support the tax break? That's my question to you. We'll get your answer right after we check in with Paul Jurgens at that KFGO News Center. Also, your Road Warrior reports, you can continue to send those in. Here's a blanket statement for you, as though I didn't just have any over the last 5 minutes. It's icy out there, so slow down. Give yourself some more time because that wind did blow over some of that snow that has accumulated and polished up some of our roadways outside of city limits by the sounds of it. If you want to get a Road Warrior report in, though, you know how to do so, and we'll get that out as we are fast approaching that 5 o'clock punch-out. I'm Tyler Axtis. We'll also talk about tonight's Summit League Championship. Once you know, NDSU, SDSU going to be taking on that championship bout later on tonight. We'll talk about that. We can talk about anything that you want to get off your chest. You got it locked into 790 AM, 104.7 FM. Perhaps you were listening worldwide at KFGO. Don't go anywhere.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that? It Takes Two. Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Paul Jurgens News Radio.
Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Brad Field and Equitable Agri-Finance, providing long-term fixed-rate financing to America's farmers and ranchers.
Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy. It's 23. I'm Paul Jurgens. West Fargo Police and the Cass County Sheriff's Office say they have tied a horse band to a series of burglaries. 24-year-old Shelby Witt is accused of a half-dozen break-ins at businesses in West Fargo last November and December. He has also been linked to an attempted residential burglary in Castleton. Sheriff Jesse Johnner and West Fargo Police Chief Dennis Otterness say the collaborative work of their departments, along with assistance from the Fargo and Moorhead Police Departments, led to the arrest of Witt. Devils Lake Police are investigating after a body was found behind an apartment complex. Police Chief Joe Kanowski says the body was found by a child. He says it appears the body, that of a Native American woman, had been there for some time. Kanowski says a medical examiner will determine the cause of death. After nearly a year of study and planning, the Fargo Police Advisory and Oversight Board has been approved by City Commissioners. Police Chief Dave Zabolski says the 7 members recommended to serve on that board were selected from a pool of 43 applicants.
And upon completing the interviews. The selection committee was unanimous in the selection of these individuals, and just in terms of their commitment and sincere interest in improving police community relations, but also their backgrounds, their competencies, knowledge, skills, and abilities that they will bring to this board.
The board will be a buffer between the police department and the city. Zabolski says the members will start training next month to learn about the operations of his department and its policies. Commissioner Dave Pepcorn was the only no vote. Earlier, he had called the new board redundancy. 23, this is KFGO News. You're listening to KFGO News. Police responding to a report of a weapon at a suburban Minneapolis high school today gave the all clear after a 3-hour search found nothing suspicious. A lockdown was put in place at Burnsville High School when the search began. No weapon was found and there were no injuries. After-school activities were canceled. Burnsville is south of Minneapolis. Reporter Susie Jones was outside an elementary school in North Minneapolis today where teachers are on strike.
Teachers are walking the picket line after announcing the strike about 6 o'clock last night. They are out here dressed in snow pants and boots and say they will remain here until their demands are met. Chris Hostetter is a teacher here.
We feel strong. We are fighting for safe and stable schools. We feel strong, and we're going to keep going.
Cars driving by, honking in support of the teachers. They will continue to negotiate until an agreement can be reached.
St. Paul teachers averted a strike with a last-minute agreement. Investigators in Morrison County in central Minnesota say a suspicious death report has become a homicide case. Deputies and Motley police responded to a home Sunday morning after a 911 call. The caller said he'd received a call from a friend who said he had killed his girlfriend. The body of 66-year-old Christine Nygaard was found in the home. 60-year-old Harold Wasather has been charged with second-degree murder. He and the victim lived together. KFGO Weather Center forecast. Again, some slippery driving conditions, primarily north and northeast of Moorhead, according to Road Warrior reports, pulling into KFGO, so keep that in mind. Mostly cloudy tonight. Those winds should subside. They're causing the black ice or ice building up on the highways with snow blowing across. Evening snow showers still a possibility as the winds gradually decreasing. 4 for the overnight low. Tomorrow partly to mostly cloudy and 14. Partly sunny on Thursday, 16. Fargo-Moorhead, 23 degrees. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
$25 minutes left of Afternoons Live, and quite frankly, some of these songs that we've been, actually, I'll be honest, enjoying here on a Tuesday afternoon. You'll land yourself if you have not as well. I do have, so tomorrow, every Wednesday, we're checking in with Bill Werner. He's our friend down in the St. Paul, Capital correspondent, Minnesota News Network. And of course, there's a number of things. I just saw the fact that Minnesota, you're probably going to be getting sports betting. The ball seems to be rolling that way of getting this done. But when it comes to this whole teacher strike, how did St. Paul avoid having teachers go on strike, but Minneapolis didn't? I mean, there's very little separation. It's not a river between the two. So there are certain strikes, I think, that the public watches that they say, you know what, I can get behind this, I can understand. Teachers seem to be on that delicate line for a lot of people in their mind saying, should they be allowed to strike? Because they can't in all places. I'm sitting in a place where you cannot, as a teacher, strike. We can talk about that in this final half hour as well. Other messages coming in about what I was saying about tax breaks. I'm just saying, if you have the luxury of owning a private plane and you're an investor in some things, do you really need the tax break? I don't care if it's a soybean plant, if it's a stadium. Do you need tax breaks? I'll get to your thoughts on that right after the CBS National News.
Robertson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Dear
Mighty
Kansas Couch
790.
Potato Radio. Did you see that from It Takes Two? Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Jerkins News Radio.
Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
What do you think about influential artists, influential female artists? You got to put Aretha Franklin towards, the top 3, right?
Yeah, we've been doing all female music today,
and
I saved some of the big guns for the end of the show.
Yeah, because I see who else is coming up as I do gaze into this software over here. Because they do the whole Mount Rushmore of greatest quarterbacks of all time. Yeah, so there's been a little sarcasm in there if you couldn't hear that through these airwaves. But if you had to, as far as influential female artists, you think Dolly Parton, because of just not only the songs that she's well known for performing, but also how many songs she's written for other people to go on and perform.
And still inspiring young artists in popular music today.
Correct. I still haven't figured out what she was hosting last night. Somebody let me know. 35270. I saw it was all over online, but I didn't take the time to do the click. So, I mean, do you put Dolly Parton at number one? You got Aretha up there.
Yeah.
Now, the one that's coming up in just a minute, this is part of that, 27 club?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that narrow window for a Janis Joplin. Now, granted, I mean, the performance, the ability, her music, so great. But in that short a time span, do you think that she had as much influence as others out there? Do you have to take into account longevity for the impacts of influence is my question.
Well, and I think Janis was at such a pivotal transitional time for music in general.
Right.
That even though it's a shortened career significantly, like that was a hugely influential artist.
See, because I could say the same thing when I think about the 27 Club. I mean, Kurt Cobain with Nirvana.
Right.
It was about the time frame, and now that was the grunge era. They were the ones that helped push that to the mainstream. Somebody sends in a text already, the Mount Rushmore of influential female artists. Stevie Nicks, great addition. Phenomenal addition. Thank you for texting that. And you can lend in your artist, your musician as well here. Because Stevie Nicks, yes. Celine Dion?
Yeah. Cher would have to be in that conversation for longevity.
Madonna?
Madonna, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tina Turner?
Yeah. Whitney Houston?
Yep.
I mean, now what we've gone well beyond the five that you're limited to.
Well, but these are the conversations to get to those people.
Yeah. Somebody's calling into the Laney studio line 237-594. I mean, what artists do you have to include as influential? I'm not talking most popular. Not had the most number one hits. As far as they influenced music, they influenced that era of which they were performing in. They influence future generations. That's the conversation if you're thinking about lending in. Because right or wrong, it's all opinion based. Because I could also say, if you're basing it on popular number one hits, you could say, well, then do you have Britney Spears? No, not at all, in my opinion. You can't have her in this Mount Rushmore. Now, if you can make an argument for me, fine. They didn't want to go on air.
No, this was another road report. Echoing the I-94 between Mapleton and Castleton westbound has got a large, very slippery spot. I think you give special consideration to artists like Dolly who write and make music.
That's why I put her at number one. Dolly is number one. Because, you know her from the actual performance. You recognize her voice. But I bet you if you didn't know how many songs that she wrote that other artists then went on to make as number one hits that have her fingerprints on it, she's got to be the most influential female artist of our era.
Yeah, certainly of modern music, I would say.
Bonnie Raitt comes in as one of the greatest, one of the 100 greatest guitar players of all time, let alone one of the greatest singers.
Yeah, I think you look at the Runaways with Lita Ford and Joan Jett as a band that was punk rock. Female band that had mainstream appeal.
You throwing Joan Jett out there alone again. Like I said, to start off the show with that, you played Joan Jett. Going to her at the lights. I mean, it was one of those kind of starstruck moments, even though I'm going to throw a number. I think she's like 63. I know she's in her 60s. She was still out there rocking those hits as though it was still 1982. Right. It was great. I mean, the longevity, again, has to play a factor in the influence of all this. Barbra Streisand comes in. Carly Simon, Grace Slick.
Yeah, Grace Slick would be way up there with Jefferson Airplane.
Yep. Joan Baez? Why does that name not roll off my
Joan Baez.
Baez, okay. It's easy for you to say.
Yeah, similar. I mean, those of us familiar with Forrest Gump will know that was one of Jenny's inspirations for why she wanted to be a musician. Folk music, acoustic guitar, 60s era.
Yeah, pull up a song of hers for me, because and we can do that as we get you caught up with weather from Too Tall Tom. Pat Benatar comes in. Yeah, I mean, the names are mostly recognizable. And you know me, I'm terrible with names. So, in fact, I'm sure if I hear it, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I know this. But we've got another 10 minutes left. We'll see what's coming up in the Drive Time News. Derek Hansen's going to lead you into the UND Coaches Show. Who are you putting up as your top female artist that's been influential through our era? That's a question before you on this day that is, quite frankly, International Women's Day. I'm Tyler Axis. You got locked into KFGO Fargo. Stick around.
Halverson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that? It Takes Two. Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning. Jerkins News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Joel Heitkamp here on the
Sure,
Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
So today on MSUM campus we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
I say, top most influential is Dolly Parton, just because of how many songs that she's helped write for other artists to go on and have number one hits, how many songs that she's had. Just her whole persona to this day influencing people of future generations. So that's my number one. I'm curious, who do you have?
Boy, that's tough. I mean, if you want to go in the Wayback Machine to one of the most popular, the Ella Fitzgerald era of kind of setting the tone, Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, that's what sparked this conversation in my mind when we played Aretha.
Tina Turner, I think, is that influence. Me being a rock fan, I'm really partial to Janis Joplin and Stevie Nicks.
What is great about you throwing these names out here, they've all been mentioned and you've been oblivious to it because you haven't been in the studio. So you're right on.
I've been in the prod room working, yeah. So.
Oh, you were working over there, you weren't?
Yes.
Okay.
Normally I do.
Sorry, I never know what you're up to anymore.
Wait, someday we'll teach Tyler how to use the prod room.
That's all about job security for Eric.
He's been adamant. I think it's more about extra responsibilities for him. But
I was going to bring it up, but he went with, you were working over there.
Here's a little secret. This is about keeping Eric employed because if I now know how to operate that board and this system, people will be wondering, well, then what would you say you do here?
Well, I mean, we can switch anytime you want. You can just see how it goes back here.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Anyway, back to the topic at hand here. Spotlight List not on me. It's about the female
Love on
artist.
Top video of Beyonce does get a vote, though.
Yeah, I mean, in modern era,
Amy and I have had this conversation. I'm not, I don't listen to Beyonce a lot.
Yeah, a lot. I'm glad you qualified with a lot. But you dabble.
No, just because I watch the Love on Top video every once in a while because it's a very good video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I'm enjoying it, and the sound isn't even on.
I noticed. I see now.
That's a different way to celebrate International Women's Day.
Yeah, not the angle we're going for. We were respectful.
The dancing is amazing.
See now, how did I not know, or how did I know that you weren't doing that over in the production room? Just watch.
He's a multitasker.
Thank you. I was just going to say the same thing, Eric. Thank you.
I could have this music video playing without sound and still do my daily tasks.
Exactly. Still doing all the promos, and it works out good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patsy Cline comes in a couple of times.
Pretty good.
Carole King, Ann and Nancy Wilson. Linda Ronstadt comes in as well. Pat Benatar, Barbara Streisand, Janis Joplin. So, great list compiled on this.
Did anyone mention the coal miner's daughter? No, not yet. That kind of surprises me a little bit, just thinking about how influential she was on the country scene. So you mentioned Dolly too. I think that would be, that's all. There's a lot of them. That's good.
Is, tough question, but you know what? You delivered out there.
Hearing Stevie Nicks sing live at the Xcel Energy Center, I think it was November 2018. Amber and I went down to Fleetwood Mac concert. It was amazing to hear that. I mean, still sitting late 60s at the time, I think, and it was beautiful. It was something else.
There are 3 voices that I have heard in person that have just captivated not only me but the audience.
I bet you I know one.
Yeah, Robert Plant was. I mean,
that was unbelievable.
I still get goosebumps talking about it this day. Adele at Xcel.
I don't doubt that.
There didn't have to be any music playing. Adele captivated that entire audience with that voice. Stevie Nicks. I went to Fleetwood. Down in Sioux Falls, though. Again, I mean, just when she was out there belting, it was just goosebumps level.
Yeah, crazy. Just the crazy talent with that. So, it was a lot of fun.
You got the drive time news. Quickly, what's coming up?
Yeah, we got, we'll look at Wall Street, what's been going on there, obviously, and traffic and weather together. We'll have a little sports for you, previewing tonight's, the semifinal games in Region 1 are bonkers. I mean, those 4 teams, they could be, top 2 in most regions, and then just to think that 3 of those teams won't make it to state is crazy because I think they all could qualify and be in the running for a state championship. So it should be a fun one coming up tonight.
Very good. We also got the Summit League. We'll recap if NDSU or the Jackrabbits win tonight. Quite the tournament.
That's fun.
I'm glad that's how it ended up. So we'll tell you about all that tomorrow because you know what, folks? That's it for me today. Derek Hansen got the drive time news. I'm Tyler Axedis. This was Afternoons Live. We'll do it all over again tomorrow. Full lineup for you. Until then, you drive safe. You take care of yourselves. I'll check in tomorrow right here on KFGO.